When my ship finally touched the ground, the heat hit me first, not burning, but heavy, like the air itself was watching me. 3 suns hung in the sky, frozen in a strange balance, painting the land in gold, crimson, and pale white light. I stepped out slowly, my boots sinking into soft, glass-like sand. That's when I noticed them. They didn't rush me. They didn't speak. One by one, alien women emerged from behind curved stone structures and glowing plants. They stood in a wide circle around me, tall and graceful, their skin reflecting the colors of the 3 suns. Their eyes were unlike anything I'd seen, deep, layered, as if they could see more than just my face. I raised my hands to show I meant no harm. No reaction. The silence was overwhelming. On Earth, silence usually meant danger. Here, it felt like judgment, or study. I realized I wasn't being threatened. I was being observed. I was something new in their world, a living question that had fallen from the sky. One of them stepped forward. She didn't touch me. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, the way a human might when trying to understand a strange sound. Her expression wasn't hostile. It was curious. Careful. Almost thoughtful. I remembered then why I came, to prove we weren't alone, and that alone didn't have to mean afraid. Slowly, I removed my helmet. The air was breathable, warm, carrying a faint hum I could feel in my chest. A quiet murmur passed through the circle. Not words, feelings. Recognition. They didn't welcome me with smiles or gestures. They welcomed me by staying. By choosing not to leave. In that moment, surrounded by silent alien women under 3 burning suns, I understood something simple and powerful. First contact wasn't about speaking first. It was about listening, and being seen. The silence didn't break. Instead, it shifted. I felt it before I saw it, like a low vibration moving through the ground and into my chest. The alien women began to move, not away from me, but closer. Their steps were slow, careful, almost respectful. No weapons. No sudden gestures. Just attention. One of them raised her hand. Her fingers were longer than mine, glowing faintly at the tips. She didn't touch me. She stopped inches away, waiting. I nodded. That seemed to be enough. A soft light rippled through the circle, traveling from one woman to the next. Their eyes changed, focusing inward, as if they were sharing thoughts without sound. I realized then that their silence wasn't emptiness, it was communication. I was the only one who couldn't hear it. Images flashed in my mind. Not clear pictures, but feelings, arrival, difference, uncertainty. They weren't afraid of me. They were deciding what I was. A structure rose behind them, smooth and curved, grown rather than built. The woman closest to me stepped aside, opening a path. It wasn't an order. It was an invitation. Every instinct told me to be cautious. But another part of me, the part that crossed space alone, told me this was the moment everything depended on. I took a step forward. The ground responded, faint lines of light appearing beneath my feet. The women watched closely, studying how I walked, how I breathed, how I reacted. I felt exposed, but not threatened. Like a guest in a place that didn't yet know my name. As we moved toward the structure, I understood something important. I wasn't a prisoner. I wasn't a hero. I was a question they were willing to explore. And under the 3 burning suns, surrounded by beings who spoke without words, I sensed that this first meeting would change more than just my life, it would change both our worlds. Inside the structure, the light changed. The harsh glow of the 3 suns faded, replaced by a calm, flowing brightness that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air felt cooler here, steadier, like the building was designed to ease tension. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been holding my breath until my shoulders finally relaxed. The alien women formed a half-circle around me. Not trapping, framing. I noticed now how different they were from each other. Some were taller, their movements sharp and precise. Others moved softly, almost floating. This wasn't a single group mind. It was a society. The one who had first stepped toward me moved to the center. She placed her hand against her chest, then slowly mirrored the gesture toward me. I understood. A name. An identity. I'm human, I said quietly, tapping my own chest. From Earth. The word Earth meant nothing to them, but my intent did. A gentle wave of emotion brushed against my thoughts, curiosity deepened with something new, interest. The floor beneath us shifted, forming images made of light. I saw stars. Then my ship. Then me, stepping out onto their world. They had been watching long before I landed. Studying. Preparing. One image lingered longer than the rest, the three suns drifting closer together, their light growing unstable. A sense of concern passed through the room. This wasn't just about me. They hadn't gathered out of curiosity alone. I was here because I was different, because I came from a world that survived under one sun, not three. A world that adapted to imbalance. The woman at the center looked at me again, her eyes reflecting the moving stars. For the first time, I felt something clear and deliberate reach my mind. Not a word. Not a command. A question. Can you help us? In that moment, standing on a planet I barely understood, I realized my arrival wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of a choice, one that could decide the fate of the three-sun planet, and maybe my own. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to understand what help meant to them. The feeling they had shared wasn't desperation. It was measured, careful, as if they had waited a long time before even allowing the question to exist. The images on the floor shifted again. The three suns moved in slow, endless arcs, their gravity pulling at the planet in ways I could almost feel in my bones. I sensed seasons that burned too long, nights that vanished without warning, cities forced to migrate to survive. This world wasn't dying, but it was always on the edge. One of the women stepped forward and extended a small, crystal-like object. It hovered between us, humming softly. When I reached out, it reacted to my touch, glowing brighter. A ripple of surprise passed through the group. They hadn't known if it would respond to me. More images followed, human structures, orbital stations, simulations of stellar balance. They weren't asking me to save their planet with strength or weapons. They were asking for perspective. A way of thinking born from limitation, from surviving without perfect control. I felt suddenly small, and heavy with responsibility. The silence returned, but now it felt shared. Not judgment. Not study. Trust, carefully offered, not yet earned. I realized they were risking something by revealing this much. If I refused, they would let me leave. But the chance would close forever. I looked at the woman who had first approached me. Her expression hadn't changed, yet I sensed patience, not expectation. Whatever I chose, it would be mine. Outside, the light of the three suns pressed against the structure's walls, restless and powerful. Inside, a fragile connection was forming, one that could break just as easily as it could grow. I took a slow breath. I wasn't ready to promise anything. But I knew one thing for certain, I wasn't just a visitor anymore. I was part of a conversation that had been waiting across the stars, and it wasn't finished yet. Time moved differently after that. I stayed within the structure as the alien women came and went, sometimes alone, sometimes in quiet groups. They never rushed me. They never repeated the question. Instead, they showed me more of their world, carefully, deliberately, as if each moment was a test of understanding. Through shifting light and shared impressions, I learned how their civilization survived. Their cities were not fixed. They flowed with the movement of the suns. Knowledge here wasn't stored in machines alone, but in memory, passed through silent connection. Every choice was made collectively, weighed against the future. And now, I was part of that weight. The crystal device appeared again, floating beside me as I studied their stellar models. This time, it responded faster, adjusting to my thoughts before I even realized I was forming them. I showed them ideas, not solutions, just possibilities. Small changes. Long-term balance. Patience instead of force. Their reaction wasn't excitement. It was something deeper. Hope, kept under control. One evening, if it could be called that under 3 suns, the woman who first approached me stood beside the structure's opening. Outside, the sky burned in overlapping colors, unstable but beautiful. I felt her attention focus on me, more personal than before. They had discussed me. Not as a tool. Not as a threat. As a bridge. But bridges are fragile. They can connect worlds, or collapse between them. I sensed what was coming before it happened. A decision was forming, not just about their planet, but about me. Staying longer would mean commitment. Leaving would mean safety, but silence. The 3 suns shifted again, their light intensifying, reminding us both that time wasn't endless. Whatever came next wouldn't be a question anymore. It would be a choice, with consequences written across 2 worlds. The decision was made without ceremony. No announcement. No gathering. The alien women stood with me beneath the open sky, the 3 suns stretching the horizon in unstable harmony. I felt their thoughts settle, calm, resolved. They weren't asking me to stay forever. They were asking me to begin. The crystal rose once more, but this time it split into strands of light, weaving around my hands and chest. Not binding, aligning. I understood then, they weren't changing me, and they weren't changing themselves. They were creating a space where both ways of thinking could exist. I spoke, not with words, but with intent. I would help them design balance, not control. Systems that could adapt when the suns shifted, not fight against them. In return, they would share their knowledge, their memory, their silence. The woman who had first met me stepped closer. For the first time, she touched my hand. The contact was brief, steady, real. Not affection. Not dominance. Acknowledgement. Around us, the planet responded. Light traced new paths across the land, subtle changes beginning, not miracles, just the first step of many. The 3 suns continued their endless motion, powerful and indifferent, but no longer untouched by hope. I knew I would leave someday. Humans always do. But I also knew I would return. As my ship lifted later, the planet shrinking beneath me, I didn't feel like I was leaving a strange world behind. I was carrying it with me. When I looked back at the 3-sun planet one last time, I understood the truth of first contact. It isn't about who arrives. It's about who chooses to stay connected, even across the stars. Under the light of the 3 suns, nothing dramatic happened. No celebration. No farewell. The alien women simply watched as my ship prepared to leave. Not with sadness, not with fear, but with understanding. What had begun here didn't need words or promises. As I rose into the sky, the planet remained the same, yet I knew it wasn't. A small shift had already started, not in the suns, but in the way 2 worlds now thought about each other. I wasn't their savior. They weren't my discovery. We were witnesses to a moment where curiosity became trust. When the 3-sun planet disappeared into the stars, I realized something quietly powerful. First contact doesn't end when you leave. It ends only when you forget. And I never would.